Hi, this is Tiffanie DeVan, and I am your host of the Higher Education Access Corner. Today's segment is our Hot Topics, and I am happy to have with me our co-host, Diona Brown.
Hi, everybody.
All right, so today, what we're going to be talking about is financial aid. The main reason is because this is Financial Aid Awareness Month. So Financial Aid Awareness Month is actually something that's been around for quite some time, and it's a nice, good, easy way for students, families, educators, and everyone who's involved with understanding about post-secondary education or who's actually providing some information about post-secondary education to be aware, to get more information, to dig a little bit deeper. So we want to make sure that the information is available to students, to families, educators, and everyone else. So we've just dedicated this particular segment all about financial aid. Diona, I know we were talking before and we were talking about different stats that come out there and how financial aid is used and with whom it's used, who actually uses it. There are some good stats that NASA put out. NASA actually has a website, NASFAA.org, and on there you can actually get some good stats. A couple of the stats that I noticed that were from 2020 to 2021 was that undergraduate students receive an average of a little less than $15,000 in financial aid if you're a full-time student. So it's a little less than 15,000, but it's actually 14,800, which is a nice amount for a student. Another thing is that institutions provide an estimated $57 billion in grant aid to undergraduate students. So it's about 48% of undergraduate students actually receive some type of a grant in the 2020-2021 academic school year. Now, for graduate students, customarily, they don't get as much from federal and state aid, but they also did receive institutional grants as well. They account for about 68% for them. So institutions or those post-secondary schools actually funded about 68% of their own grant or institutional aid to those students. So those are good numbers. Something I tell everyone is, especially during financial aid month, you'll get a lot of information. There's a hashtag called hashtag FINAIDFEB. So hashtag FinAidFeb. And if you do that, you can come up with all sorts of data and stats, trivia, all about financial aid awareness. So now that we have that part out of the way, let's kind of dig a little deep into talking about financial aid. And let's talk about some of the things we wish families understood about the financial aid process.
Yes, I think that some things that I really always point out to students and parents is that you have to remember that financial aid is an annual process. So usually the first time that students apply for financial aid, if they plan on going to college right after high school, is going to be their senior year in high school. So that year, that is when they want to do their free application for federal student aid in October, as early as possible after October 1st. And that is the main form that they're going to use to apply for any aid from the federal government, the state government, and also the colleges. And I think one of the things that some families get concerned about is they're like, oh, well, we know we're not going to be eligible for the free money. Do we still need to do the FAFSA? The answer is yes. If you want to get any type of assistance, you still want to complete that free application for federal student aid. Because if the student plans on taking out student loans, the FAFSA has to be completed first. And also you could be missing out on free money from the college itself if you don't do the FAFSA. So one of the key points I always try to reiterate to students and parents, your first step is to start with that FAFSA, make sure that is completed, and that will get that ball rolling. The other nice thing that we have done is we have attached the state grant application to the end of the FAFSA form. So you can actually do your FAFSA and your state grant application at the same time, and then that will determine the student's eligibility for all of the federal and the state aid available to them.
Good points. And I also think it's good for students and families to remember where to go to. So studentaid.gov in order to complete the FAFSA application. And like you said, there's a link at the end on the confirmation page of the FAFSA to complete the Pennsylvania State Grant. Now, if they happen to miss that link, they can also go to PHEAA.org, which is PHEAA.org, in order to complete the Pennsylvania State Grant as well. Another thing, scholarships. I know that's something that you were talking about, we were talking about previously before. Scholarships aren't just based on financial need or high academic achievement. And you and I have done a couple segments where we were talking about scholarships and we talked about the importance. So if you want to, just share a couple tidbits on that or even a story or two, just so that folks remember the importance of applying for a scholarship and know that it's also a form of financial aid.
Absolutely. One of the biggest questions that I get from students and parents is after they have received all of their financial aid, sometimes there's a gap there. So sometimes they have a gap in funding where they've received all their grants, they've looked at different things, and they still have a gap and they say, okay, where's this money going to come from? And I say, did you apply for any scholarships? Well, no, you definitely don't want to miss out on that free money. I was at a high school a number of years ago, and there was a young lady there that got $20,000 in scholarships. Now, some of that scholarship money was directly from the college, but most of the scholarship money that she received was from her going online on her own, finding scholarship opportunities and applying for them. So there's a lot of money to be had if you just take the time and apply for those scholarships. And I think one of the misconceptions is that students and parents believe that, unless they're at the top of the class or they're a star athlete, that they're not going to get any scholarships. That's absolutely not true. There's tons of scholarships out there. You can get scholarships for being involved in your community, for volunteering, for being involved in different clubs and activities, extracurricular activities. There's so many scholarships out there. It's just a matter of looking for them and applying for them. And I say, do it as like a part-time job. Every
Mhm.
week, go ahead and do those scholarship applications. I think another misconception is that families think, okay, once we go to college, that's it. No, you want to continue to apply for those scholarships until you get out of college. It's one of the things that I wish that I would have done in my personal life, because unfortunately, I didn't have someone talking to me, when I was in high school about applying for scholarships. So I just thought, oh, I'm not going to be eligible. And I probably missed out on free money. So I always say, the more scholarships you get, less student loans you have to take out. So definitely
Absolutely.
look for and apply for those scholarships. Tons of them out there. One of the biggest resources that you want to use for your scholarships is your high school guidance counselors at the school. They will be they will have information on local scholarships, which will be a lot easier for you to get, less competition. You can also check with the college that you plan on attending. They may have scholarships that you can apply for. And finally, don't miss out on those national scholarships. There are various different scholarship websites out there. Fastweb.com is a huge one. Check out that website. Students can create a profile and then it can match up scholarships to things that they're already interested in or involved in. So scholarships, scholarships, scholarships. We can't emphasize that enough. You need to apply to get the money. So you definitely don't want to miss that opportunity.
Totally agree with you on all those points regarding scholarships. And again, we won't beat that over the head today, but for those who actually want more details, they can go back out and look at some of our previous podcasts because we did focus a little deeper on scholarships and we really elaborated on a lot of things. A lot of the different websites that we have between educationplanner.org, PHEAA's website, we have a lot of resources as well about scholarships. And we do push so much for that because we realize that sometimes there's a gap in funding. Sometimes you apply for the financial aid and you just may not qualify for every single thing. So scholarships can be a great way to bridge the gap when, that still exists when you have your costs and you don't have quite enough funding of your own or financial aid, other forms of financial aid to cover those expenses that you have. And sometimes that's the difference between finding a school of, your choice that could be a little pricey or choosing, your plan B that is out there. And I know that some of the things that you wanted to talk about also about college costs and how they can be controlled a little bit and what's involved in some college costs as well.
Absolutely. I think another thing that families should look at when they are considering as to what college they want to go to, when you're talking about controlling costs, some of the choices that you make can really have an impact on what you're going to be paying. So, one of the tips is that what some students will take advantage of is, for example, going to a community college for their first 2 years and then transferring into that 4-year college as a junior. Your first 2 years in college, no matter what school you go to, you're pretty much going to be doing your same core curriculum. You're going to be doing your English 101, you're going to be doing your college algebra. So why not save money and do that at a community college first and then transfer in as a junior to a 4-year school? You can save a lot of money doing that. I think it's also helpful for students that may not be really sure as to what they want to major in. Unfortunately, what some students will do, they'll go away to school, they'll go into a major, start taking classes in that major, and then change majors. And then all those courses they just took, they don't count towards their ultimate major. If you go to a community college first and you make those types of different choices, you won't be paying as much as you would at a traditional 4-year school. And I think another good tip is if you're not sure as to what courses that you want to go into yet, don't rush yourself. Declare general studies and then give yourself some time to really think about what you want to major in before you start making that commitment. Because remember, in college, you're paying for every minute that you are in front of that professor. So you really want to be sure before you commit to that course that that's what you want to go into. And then my final tip on that is if there is a college that you can commute to, that can save a lot of cost with rooming and board. And of course, going to a school within your state. Most states will offer an in-state tuition discount if you live in the state. So definitely, keep that in mind as well when you are considering different colleges and if you are looking at trying to control costs that way.
Absolutely. All good points. And another thing I also tell students, if you're not sure what you want to do, um, start doing the research a lot earlier. Don't wait until your senior year to start doing career exploration, possibly job shadowing, or just talking to folks in different fields to figure out what it is that they do. Do they like it? Challenges, what tips they could give them about courses they need to take while in high school. So the more information that they're exposed to about different careers and opportunities, sometimes by the time they get to their senior year, they know what they want, they know what major they're going into, and it makes that process go a lot more smoother. And generally, you're able to keep down your costs because you don't run the risk of possibly having to transfer or say, hey, you know what, I didn't like this major, I'm going to transfer now, or I'm going to change majors, which now means there's going to be more money that's going to be required in order to complete those courses that's out there. Now, something for me, some of the things that I'm talking to families that I really, really wish that they knew about financial aid. And because this is the podcast and it's not the formal setting that we're usually in when we're talking to students and families, I'm going to just be blunt about it. And I say it with love. Stop overlooking the deadlines. Make sure you get all paperwork completed by the deadlines, because if you're missing those deadlines, you're possibly missing out on opportunities to get the free money. And I can't stress that enough to students. I can't stress that enough to parents. And I always say, it's the early bird who gets the worm when it comes to financial aid. Some types of financial aid, the funding is limited, especially with these scholarships. So if you're turning in these scholarship applications late and everyone else turned theirs in on time, rarely are they going to just leave the money on the table. So you want to make sure that, number one, you research deadlines. There's a deadline for when the FAFSA needs to be completed, for when the Pennsylvania state grant needs to be completed. Some schools also have priority filing deadlines. Know what those deadlines are, write them in a calendar, use an app in order to kind of like keep track of different things that you need to do and by when you need to get them done. One of the things that I always kind of like cringe upon is I'll talk to students and I'll talk to their families and I'll stress the importance of deadlines. But then of course, life happens, they have so many things going on. Time gets away from them. And what ends up happening, and it's not uncommon, they'll call me at the end of July, the beginning of August. Classes are about to begin. They have that bill. And the first question sometimes is, hey, Miss Tiffanie, or hey, Miss DeVan, do you know of any scholarships or financial aid? Because I have this bill and we just don't have the money. And they'll say, hey, I remember you at our financial aid night and you were talking about this opportunity and that opportunity. And my question is usually, okay, well, did you complete the FAFSA? No, not yet. How about the state grant? No, not yet. Well, that list of scholarships that I sent to you, did you tackle any of them? No, not yet. Can you resend those to me? And it's so heartbreaking when you have to tell them, I can still send send you that. Still complete the FAFSA, still complete the state grant, but you're probably not going to get the free aid because guess what? Those were deadlines and you've missed most of those. So I don't want to see students on that end of missing the deadlines. For the parents, if your students are saying, hey, if they've completed their paperwork, double check, make sure, because we don't want to miss any opportunities of leaving that, of allowing them to get what they need in the free funding that is out there. Another thing that I really want to reiterate to parents as well as students is the importance of making sure that the parents' information is completed and included on those required financial aid forms. FAFSA does require parents' information for those students who are dependent students of their parents. And sometimes there's some hesitancy there with parents sharing their information, like who's going to get it, what are they going to do with it? And it's good for those parents to know that, number one, it doesn't obligate you to actually pay the entire bill. It's not going to hurt for your information to be shared. It's only going to be used for the purposes required. And it's just to grab a picture of what the household financial strength is within the household for that student. You're not going to be told you have to borrow a student loan. You're not going to be told you have to pay the bill. But what happens is if parents don't provide that information, it really can do more harm than good to the student, simply because the student's going to be very limited what they can receive in free aid that's out there. So the free aid that's coming from the federal government or the state government, quite often even institutional aid, even if you qualify for it, if you would qualify for it, you're not going to be considered because your parents' information is not included. So parents, if you're concerned about it, reach out to the schools, reach out to us at PHEAA, reach out to the Department of Ed to get clarification about why your information is needed and how it will be used. Because the goal is to get you and your student as much of financial aid and as many resources as you possibly can. And I didn't know if you had anything to add on that or not, but that's always one of the big questions that does pop up with me, with students and their fear. And I know for me, a lot of times we explain why it's needed and how it's going to be used, and they're usually okay with sharing their information.
Yes, and I think those were all great key points. And just to follow up on that, by doing the FAFSA, you're not losing anything. All it's really doing is basically putting you in the best position to be able to get the most financial aid as possible. So I think that's just one thing that we want to always reiterate to students and families is that, it's never a bad idea to do the FAFSA, regardless of what you think might be happening. You're like, well, I'm not sure if I'm really going to go to school or not, or I'm not sure about this. Well, if you think that you may do that, it doesn't hurt to do the FAFSA because at least you'll have that in place if you do decide to go forward with pursuing your higher education. So I always say, it's always a good idea, just complete it, see what you get, and then you can start making those decisions from there. So I think it's always a good idea to err on the side of, just go ahead and complete the form and see what happens.
Absolutely. Final point I think for me with the making sure the students and families are aware of certain key things, make sure they read the forms, read the fine print, understand the terms and conditions of receiving financial aid in general, because there are different types of financial aid and they come with different expectations. You have your grants and scholarships, which can be free forms of aid. However, make sure with some of these scholarships or these grants, does the student have to maintain a minimum GPA? Do they have to take so many credit hours? And quite often there could be terms and conditions for that. Sometimes they're specific about what the financial aid can be used for. So understand the terms, understand the conditions for it. Student loans, remember a student loan is not free money. So understand your rights and responsibilities before you borrow, and also know that you will have to repay this student loan, whether you complete your program or not. So again, understand the terms, read the fine print. Not every form of financial aid is coming directly from the U.S. Department of Education or even through PHEAA. Sometimes they're from private scholarship organizations. They're legitimate, but they may have specific details. They may say, hey, you've been awarded this scholarship, and it's going to be a renewable scholarship, all contingent upon maybe you submitting your transcripts every year to them. So you got to make sure that you're going to do that. And again, it can vary based off of the type and the source of aid, but always make sure that you have a clear understanding of what it is you're getting, and how to continue to get it, how it's going to be released to you, whether it's going to go straight to the school or not. And also remember that the financial aid offices, they're your friends. Give them a call if you're not sure of the process or what's going on. They want to hear from you. They want to assist you, just like we at PHEAA do. But one thing I tell everybody, especially families, if you have a dependent student and you are completing the FAFSA application for them, or you're doing certain paperwork, and now they're away at school, and you want to call the financial aid office, you need to be aware that your child is now considered an adult at that post-secondary school. So there's this thing we call FERPA, or FERPA, which stands for Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. That means that a student's information is considered private from their parents because they're now considered an adult. So you want to have that conversation with your child before they go off to school, just in case you need to call the financial aid office or call the school in general to get information. Otherwise, they're going to tell you, due to the privacy laws that are out there, we can't share. But there are forms that the student can complete to give access to you for that information. So if you already have an understanding with your child now that you're handling a lot of these things, make sure when they go to school, that paperwork is completed as well. That way it's a nice, easy, streamlined process with you all making sure that all aid is being received when it's being issued. If there's something missing, you can address those questions in the instance that the student cannot for that.
Yes. And I just wanted to add one more point onto that, just as you were talking, and I was thinking about different things for students to be aware of as well, is that one thing that they should definitely do is go on to their school's website. Usually you can find it under the financial aid part, and make sure you look at what the college's academic progress standard is. For a lot of financial aid, students do have to make academic progress in order to keep financial aid. And you want to make sure that you're aware of that before you do take grants and loans so that you don't lose eligibility. So that's also an important thing. And a lot of times too, when you receive your financial aid notification from the college to let you know how much money you're eligible for, a lot of times they'll list it on there as well. So don't disregard that. Make sure you're aware of that. Make sure you're taking the appropriate number of credits that you need to take every semester in order to maintain your financial aid. And if you're not sure, make sure you reach out to the financial aid office at the college so they can explain that to you, because I think that that's another thing that can blindside some students that they may not be aware of and could possibly lose their financial aid if they don't meet those academic progress standards.
Mhm. Absolutely. So now let's talk about, what do we want the educators to know? So we have a lot of folks in the industry who are helping students navigate this process. In addition to folks like us who are access partners, in addition to the Department of Education, whether you're a guidance counselor, someone in the college and career field, high school, community organizations who assist throughout this process. What are some of the things, like if you're just sitting back thinking like we are now, what do you want them to remember and to know about financial aid in general in the process?
I think my biggest thing, and I know we talk about it every other word, but it's the FAFSA. The financial aid process starts with that FAFSA form. So students need to be aware that they need to complete that FAFSA form in their senior year of high school. It comes out every October 1st, and they need to complete it as soon as possible after October 1st. Once they complete the FAFSA, they do their state grant application. They should also be doing scholarship applications. Once they do that, though, then the financial aid office at the college pretty much takes over. And I think one of the big misconceptions is that they're kind of like on their own. No, every college that you go to has a financial aid office that is dedicated to helping students and families navigate this whole process. So yes, you do have to do that FAFSA form up front because the colleges need that to determine your eligibility. But once that is done, they are your primary resource. They can answer questions about what you're eligible for. They can answer questions about what the differences are between grants, scholarships, free money from the school, all those types of things. And I think sometimes families have a hesitancy to talk to the
Mhm.
financial aid office because maybe they don't want the financial aid office, or they don't want the college to be aware that they may be struggling with, making those payments. Do not fear the financial aid office. They are there to
Mhm.
help. That is why they have those offices there to assist students and families. And I can't tell you how many students and parents that I talk to, and I'm like, well, did you talk to the financial aid of the college? No, I didn't talk to them. I didn't know we could talk to them. You can definitely
Yeah.
talk to them. They want to talk to you. And I also want to make sure that counselors and educators are aware that another good reason to keep in contact with those schools is because sometimes, the schools will give out free money by the students participating in various things, coming to open houses, coming to different fast for completion nights at the colleges. They might give them a $500 grant or, things like that. So it's always a good idea for that student to keep in contact with the school, be aware of what different events that they're doing and information sessions, because you could be missing out on free money just by, not being in tune with the college. So I can't reiterate that enough, that the college is there to help you. They are not an adversary entity when you are paying for college. They actually have offices that are set up to help you and assist you with those things. So
I
that's like my biggest pet peeve.
totally agree. And another thing I think for educators and counselors who are assisting is to know that a lot of times, if you go to even to their web pages, there's a financial aid page almost every single school's website. A lot of frequently asked questions are already going to be on there. So tell your students and remind your students to use the resources that are available. Maybe they can't get in touch directly with someone at the financial aid office because maybe they're closed. Maybe they can't reach us because you know what? We're off hours. Use the resources that are available. Go to those schools' financial aid websites. Go to studentaid.gov. There's a financial aid information center and a help center tool link that they can click on where they can chat, email, or call someone directly from the Department of Education. They can assist. Same thing with PHEAA. Look at our email addresses. They can email us. They can call us during those hours. Learn to use the resources that they have. And a lot of times, I do have a lot of counselors who are very well versed in the full financial aid process. So they are a great resource. And then sometimes we'll get some to say, "Hey, you know what? This is not my strong point. We rely heavily on you all to get us through." But it's nice for them to have those resources. So something else that I want them to know and reiterate is that we actually host financial aid workshops. It's called the Financial Aid Workshop for Educators. We do it every fall, and it's a great opportunity for those who are assisting, whether you're a counselor or someone who just assists a student with the financial aid process, to get the most up-to-date information about what's going on for the upcoming academic school year. We provide a manual, we provide lots of information. We usually have a co-presenter that's coming directly from the post-secondary school. So use us as a resource. If you're able to attend them, look out for our save the dates that are coming up, and then sign up and register for them. They're totally free of charge. We don't charge for them. And another thing I say is, because there are expected to be lots of changes coming up for the 2024-2025 academic school year as a result of the FAFSA Simplification Act, we want to make sure that the schools, the educators, students, and families are fully aware of these. So take advantage of all resources that are out there. And they should also know that there's an access partner for just about every school that is out there in every region. Reach out to us because we are here to assist, just like those schools are as well. And again, don't assume the process is the same every single year. Now, that's something that I experience sometimes with counselors. So you'll get someone who comes into play and say, "Hey, you know what? I actually went through this process with, my daughter, my son, or myself recently. And so I told the student to do X, Y, and Z." And what they didn't know is that, well, that process has changed. That's no longer a requirement now. Something as simple as selective service. I told them they have to register with selective service, otherwise they won't be eligible for financial aid. Well, that's no longer the case. They still have to register with selective service, but it's not going to eliminate them from financial aid. So just making sure they're up to date before they're giving out the information to the students is also helpful to the students and the families as well. Excuse me. I think also what they should know is they don't have to do it alone. We realize that they are inundated with so many other things that are going on. So, we're there to support in any way that we can. So we want them to know that, we're a great resource for them, and we understand that, they have a heavy load in itself. Also, if you're thinking about some frequently asked questions that you might get, what do you think are some of like maybe the top 2 or 3 that you may get on financial aid in general from anyone? I can say like maybe for me, one of the biggest questions that came up that may come up from students and families is at what point do I file for a student loan? You know, I know I'm going to need some student loans. When do I get them? And usually the first question is, well, you're making that assessment now. It's only like October or November. Have you applied for the grants and the scholarships? And I usually say after you've exhausted all other forms of financial aid, you definitely want to have an understanding of student loans. I always tell them you want to make sure that you know the various types of student loans. So do your research, attend the webinars and the sessions that are held, whether be through the Department of Education or through PHEAA. But April, I usually say, is a good time to really start that. I don't know if you kind of flow with the same thing with April, but by April, you should have a sound understanding because you want to make sure that you know what you're really going to need. Let those financial aid notification letters come in from the schools telling you what you may or may not receive in financial aid. Keep looking for scholarships. And then at that point, if you realize you really do still need student loans, then you apply for them. That's one of the common questions that I usually get. I don't know about you. What's a couple that you might get?
Yeah, that I definitely get that question. I also a lot of times get the question, do we have to do the FAFSA? So the answer, we already talked about that. Answer to that is always yes, unless you plan on paying entirely out of pocket. Uh, I think another common, I think, well, it's getting to be more and more common. And this one is, it's not necessarily a question, but it's more of it's a concern. So I think one of the things that students and parents should be aware of is that when different entities are asking for more information, that's a normal part of the process. It doesn't mean necessarily that you did something wrong or that something was filled out incorrectly. So sometimes I'll get questions. They'll receive a letter from, for example, from our state grant department asking for more information, and they automatically assume, oh, we didn't fill out the FAFSA right, and that's why they're asking us these questions. No, no, no. That's a normal part of the process, is to be expected. So always make sure that you are monitoring the student's email address that they used to file the FAFSA with, and also monitoring your mail to see if anyone needs additional information. Additional information does not necessarily mean something's wrong. It means they need additional information to determine your eligibility. So your best bet is to go ahead, complete the information that's being requested of you. If you do have questions, a lot of times they will have customer service numbers on there for you to call for any questions. And of course, you can always reach out to your access partners and we can assist you with that as well. But I think that that's coming up more and more. I get concerns from families that are automatically, thinking something's wrong because someone's asking them for more information, when in fact, that's just a normal part of the process. The college
Mhm.
could also ask you for more information as well. So just be aware of that is a normal part of financial aid.
Yep. And I think if students, families, educators, if they're really out there and they're getting the information from the Department of Education and they're looking on for the frequently asked questions, they'll get to see that information is common as well. To say, hey, you know what? If we're asking for more information, make sure you respond. And a lot of times, if you don't respond, then they're not able to make a decision based off of what your financial strength fully looks like in the household, and then they may miss out on financial aid if they never respond. So it's important to make sure that they respond within a time frame that is requested of them. I think is another good important thing to remember. I think in general, though, we've given them hopefully a nice overview about financial aid in general. As just a recap for some quick reminders that it all starts with the FAFSA, free application for federal student aid. That is the primary application that students and families will complete in order to be considered for federal, state, and institutional aid. Pennsylvania State Grant is also another form that needs to be completed. You also want to make sure that you're consistently looking for those scholarships all throughout, and you continue this process of applying for financial aid, looking for scholarships up until the time that you actually complete your program of study, regardless of whether it's a 2-year program, a 4-year program, or maybe you're going on for even higher education. Continue to look for those resources. Remember that you do have resources in the Department of Education at PHEAA, those post-secondary schools, as well as within your high schools as well. Those counselors, if they can't answer your questions, they know who to reach out to in order to get those done. Last couple things I want to just remember, I want folks to remember is there are resources that we've talked about. So a couple websites that I just always point out, studentaid.gov, that is through the US Department of Education. That's where it's kind of like a one-stop shop with this website. You can get additional information on financial aid. You can actually complete the FAFSA application, even apply for a federal student loan on this same site. PHEAA.org, we've mentioned that in the past. Also, I tell students and families, if they're on our website, PHEAA.org, under the tools tab, they kind of click on that, and then there's going to be an area that says financial aid resources. We have everything for educators. We have everything for students and families. We have videos for those who are just anxious and happy to see Diona and I's face. You know what? You're going to see us on those videos, giving you little short snippets of information about different types of financial aid that are out there. We also have publications for you all and some additional websites that you can actually see. Those post-secondary schools websites, financial aid offices, collegecost.ed.gov is one of my favorite. That's also through the Department of Education. PHEAA.org is one also, College Board. So lots of resources that I'm referring to. Did I miss any that you can think of?
I think you covered them all. Well, did you say PHEAA.org?
I did, but you can say it again.
Yes, that's our website. So yes, definitely make sure you're checking out our website as well. And we just want to reiterate that.
All right. So if Diona, you have nothing else to add, we're going to wrap up this particular episode of our Hot Topics. For those of you who are listening to us, we thank you for listening, and we will see you the next time on the Higher Education Access Corner.